we do want to talk about this. Last year, like we mentioned, this run of O linemen has been going on the last several years. I've mentioned it multiple times. What it's done for you guys with the Lions, a solid tackle is absolutely imperative, and having a great line, great protection to your quarterback. We look back at last year, and we know who a lot of the guys were that were on top of the list. There was the Evan Neals out of Alabama. There was the Ikem Ekwonu from NC State, Charles Cross out of Mississippi State, Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa, and then Nicholas Petit-Frere out of Ohio State. I mean, they were studs. We did all this research, all this stuff on them last year. We've seen what they were. How do you think it panned out for them as far as where they were drafted, where they went, and who's the top of the list? Who actually came out and did solid like Panay did for you guys 2 years ago?
To me, I think the best tackle from last year, the first half of the season was Ekwonu. The second half of the season was Evan Neal. Evan Neal kind of came into his own playing that right tackle there, which that shows you he had a hard time switching from left to right. He really did. And but man, when he picked it up, he was solid down that stretch for them. But I think for the overall year, I would give it to Ekwonu. But I mean, Ekwonu played solid. Evan Neal was solid. Charles Cross was sneaky good. But it was kind of reversed. He was better in the run game than he was the pass game, which was a little surprising because they hardly ran at Mississippi State.
Right.
Mike Leach was the head coach.
R.I.P. in that air raid offense.
Yeah, you don't run the ball unless the quarterback calls an audible. Yeah. That's a quote from Mike Leach. So
right, I think there was a stat where it was like 99.5 chances they pass it, and it's like 0.5, and maybe they run it. It's like, oh my god.
And he's like, I didn't call the run play. He audibled the run play. Like, just insane. Trevor Penning needs a lot of work. He really struggled this past year. Both just like his play and the mentality he brought to the game. He cost them a lot of yards and penalties, made a lot of mistakes. Hopefully he can fix that. Then the Saints have their left tackle back, especially with Derek Carr being in the fold now.
I need that.
And my boy Jamal running behind him. So,
I'm sorry.
That one sucked. I mean, realistically, Montgomery is an upgrade. Montgomery's a better back than Jamal. Yeah. But it still sucks to see Jamal go. But then Petit-Frere was really surprising for me. Yeah. How well he played for Tennessee. Because he was a left tackle at Ohio State. Transitioned to the right tackle. But he was another one kind of like Charles Cross, where he was a better pass protector than he was a run blocker. All he did when he got to Tennessee was just maul people over in that running game. He played phenomenally. I was so surprised by how he played. And I think he could be extremely solid for them in the future. It'll be interesting to see if they move him to left tackle or if they keep him at right. I wouldn't mess with it. Keep him at right. Go get yourself a left tackle. Yeah. But that's one of those guys that's a potential cornerstone building block like we've been talking about with some of these other guys. And to get him in the middle of the third round, that's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, and they definitely need it. Is there anybody that you kind of think reminds you of somebody from last year, just in that top 5 group?
I mean, Anton Harrison is Charles Cross for me. Like I said earlier, it's just that guy, we got to see them as a run blocker before we can really see how they fit. Yeah. And then, I think if Ekwonu is Peter Skronsky for me. Okay. Because Ekwonu was one where, and Skronsky's the exact same. I don't really list him as an offensive tackle. When it came draft time, I just put offensive lineman. Okay. Because he's a guy that can kind of play across the board. If we're comparing last year to this year, Evan Neal is Paris Johnson for me. and again, this is a lot like last year where those two had kind of separated themselves from the rest by draft night. So I think last year's class is very similar to this year's. And I mean, we were talking about where I said there's solid guys that could contribute all the way down the board. Petit Frere was a 3rd-round pick. Abraham Lucas was a 3rd-round pick, started. Bernard Ryman was a 3rd-round starting left tackle for the Colts. Cordell Volson played valuable reps for Cincinnati. Braxton Jones, starting left tackle for the Bears. Like, Thayer Munford played pretty well for the Raiders, 7th-round pick. Jeez. Like, so there were guys from 1 to 276 or whatever the last pick was that contributed on NFL 53-man rosters. Oh, and I think this year's going to be pretty similar.
Oh, yeah. I'll throw in Chris Paul out of Oklahoma State. We got him in like the 6th or 7th round, and he was able to get in action. They said all he does is just push people around, just moves people out of the way.
He is a road grader.
Yes, and I love that. I love that. Now, I mean, let's talk about some of the guys that are on that list from last year. And I mean, right next to Chris Paul at Oklahoma State was Tyler Smith. He got picked up first by the Cowboys, their first pick in the first
their
round.
First round pick, yep. First round, and what was the overall here? Oh, I messed it up. Let's go back here.
20s, like
24th overall.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember last year when Ash and Cindy were doing the show, Ash just lost her mind. She was like, "Why are we getting this guy?" But he ended up playing, and I honestly, he was actually pretty solid for what he was able to do.
Yeah, and he was a guy that played multiple spots for them. Like, Tyron Smith went down early. He played left tackle. Tyron Smith came back. He was a very solid guard. There were times where he went out to right tackle. He was extremely versatile and played some key roles for Dallas at key points in the season. Yeah. So a guy and I was like Ash. I was not very high on him. I was like, this is a bad pick. They messed up. Yeah. They should have gone elsewhere, and I was proved wrong. This was a guy that was extremely solid, absolutely deserving of that first round pick, and I can't wait to see what they do with him in the future because it makes these tackles they have that were previously untouchable, makes them expendable.
Absolutely. Now, I don't like to hear that. I don't like to hear that Dallas players are getting better, but it is what it is. All right, it is what it is. If you can talk about Ohio State, I will talk about the Cowboys. Daggone it. Oh, me. But look, and we talked about a couple of these other names before. Daniel Falalele went to the Ravens. Bernard, I think Raymond. Out of Central Michigan. I think that's the biggest thing right now is that it's getting to the point that you're going to have some guys that flop. Don't think everybody on this list dominated. You know what I mean? There are some guys that it just didn't pan out. But like you said, sometimes it's the situation. Sometimes you got to move from this to this. Or it's the second or the third team where you're actually able to fit, get the reps, and get in rotation. But I definitely think we got to pay attention to some of these other guys deeper down because, like you said, you don't know where you're going to find talent. Last week we talked to Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy. You know what I mean? Who knows who is going to be this year? Is it Sean Clifford? We discussed that. Who do you think is the Mr. Irrelevant O lineman? Or I'm trying to dig deep in your brain because I know you got this. That's a good one.
Because I know last year my Mr. Irrelevant offensive lineman, and he performed damn well, was Jamari Salyer for the Chargers.
Right.
Was starting at guard. Rashawn Slater went down, and he started at left tackle and played very well. Oh, yeah. So my Jamari Salyer for this year, that's a tough one. Like, I mean, some of those guys I talked earlier, like Asim Richards, if he falls to the 7th round, could be him. Luke Haggard from Indiana is a solid choice. Warren McClendon from Georgia. Mm-hmm. Earl Bostic from Kansas is a sneaky one. Keep an eye on him. I really like him. He might go undrafted. But I like his game. I mean, he's another one where, for Darnell Wright, we were talking about Hendon Hooker. Everyone was talking about Jalen Daniels this past year. Yep. I mean, he had a solid tackle playing for him, too. So keep an eye on him.
Oh, I like that. I absolutely like that. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, definitely pay attention to this because these O linemen are definitely gonna. We all love to get the big name guys, Aaron Rodgers, the big name wide receiver, no OBJ's out there. My guy lost Jamal Williams, but gained Dave Montgomery. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've seen what Washington's been doing, but it all starts and stops with the O line. If you can't protect your quarterback, if you cannot run the ball, you're not doing much on offense. And last I checked, there ain't many defenses like the 2000 Ravens that can win games by themselves. You know what I mean? So definitely stay tuned to that.
Thanks for watching. If you like that clip, be sure to check out the other great content from the Let's Talk Football community. And as always, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when more great content like this becomes available.